People are really interested in the shadow stuff. What I've noticed in the gift training, the facilitator training, is people are, it's new awarenesses to them. There's two awarenesses that happen. The first is that people have to redefine what they mean by the word gift. Most of us come into the world thinking gifts are these beautiful things that we have, and in many cases are the source of the sources from however we have been brought up spiritually. So in my case, I listened to the Methodist minister talk about gifts every Sunday as things from God, and they were these beautiful things, and that's kind of where it ended. There was no information about how to define them or nothing other than that they were beautiful. And the more that I've become aware of my own gifts, the more I've become aware of the other side of the coin, which is that my gifts are really my strong suits. So when I'm bringing who I am to the world in a whole and healthy way, I bring the goodness of those gifts forward. If I'm grumpy or I decide I'm irritated by you, I use those exact same capacities in me to bring harm to the world by trying to manipulate you or get my way or subvert the goodness out of the possibility of our relationship. And so when people become aware of that, they get fascinated by it, because it doesn't take very long thinking about shadows to see that the way towards healing has to include both giving your gifts out of your wholehearted self and becoming aware of both the trigger events and the methods that you use, the ways you give your gifts that aren't healthy. And I know for me, that's really been the most useful thing. It's like Scott Peck said, that famous line, one of the only things I remember about all his books. It's easy to love when you feel like loving. And it's really what you do when you don't feel like loving that defines your character. And I think shadows shine a light on that.
Well, so in this context, becoming aware of when your shadows are activated and being willing to explore, the roots of your shadow, is, on the one hand, it's a strategy for recognizing when you're in your best place, your fuller self or your higher self, or the shadow side of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's also an opportunity to work on, by bringing it to light, to work on healing and integrating. So like in Hubble's framework, when our shadow shows up, we're not living in the present, we're living someplace in the past where we've become stuck. So being able to integrate whatever those experiences were, and bring healing to them through the acknowledgement or through things like meditation and, whatever kind of processes you want to use to heal those parts of you, allow you to bring more fullness to your gifts as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that to the degree that you're able to bring more fullness to your gifts, you're really just continuing to move into a higher place, not a higher, but higher is not the right word, but a healthier part, a healthier place in your development.
Mm-hmm.
In who you are in your human being, and how able you are to share the gift that you have more fully.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like he describes, there's a dark pond that's frozen inside of us that that keeps us, to whatever degree, stuck in another place. And I mean, I think that's some of the reason why sometimes when people are trying to develop, I mean, I certainly see it myself, that the less in touch I am, and the more unable I am to bring, to recognize and accept and acknowledge my shadow sides, the less able I am to be present, the less able I am to be with other people, and to fully give myself to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. So what are, have you developed a way to notice when that's happening in yourself, when you're coming from that shadow side?
Yeah, yeah. It's through my embodiment practices, through through meditation, through presencing. When I'm triggered, my body goes into an old place. It becomes rigid in the unique way that it became rigid when I was first traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
And however it is that I protect myself, or was protecting myself.
Mm-hmm.
And my shoulders tighten, my back gets tight, my jaw and my forehead become rigid. And the more that I've practiced those strategies, the better able I've been to be aware of them quicker and to let go of them in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a sort of a noticing and a letting go, a noticing of how I'm holding myself, and learning to be able to hold myself in a way that's more present and connected with the world around me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're noticing that when say you're in the midst of a conversation, you notice your shadow side starting to come out.
Yeah.
You're saying you notice it in a body awareness kind of way. Then what do you do? You're in the middle of a conversation when it's me and it's happening. You're not going to say, I got to run out of the room and get centered again here. What do you do in the midst of a conversation to return to wholeness?
Once I've noticed, which is the hard part, really, over time, I've gotten better at being able to just let go of it, to release that structure that is associated with my shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And simply the letting go brings me back into the present. And being present, by definition, being fully present, is sans shadow.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people talk about letting go.
Yeah.
People talk about it's part of the AA model, letting go. It's part of all different kinds of forgiveness work, letting go.
Yeah.
How do you actually let go? This thing it's in your brain, your body is aware of it, you're tighter, you're stiffer, you have heightened fear awareness. How do you actually let go of something?
So it's not that my body is aware of it, it's my body is it. I become that place where that shadow was born. And if we think of ourselves as not being a mind and body split, if there's no duality,
Mm-hmm.
then when we're able to let go of the structure that was created when the shadow was born, and to let go of it physically, you're present. That's the letting go.
Mm-hmm.
It's not letting go of the shadow and tossing it out into the universe. It's letting go of the holding that is the body of that shadow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great distinction, Dan. I know in me, if I'm in a conversation with you and I notice that shadow starting to come out, in me, it exhibits by my breath gets a lot shallower, and I notice that I get I can feel fear, I can feel anxiety, I can feel my eyes begin to squint a little bit, and I tend to talk faster. And what I usually do when that's happening to me, I'm not aware of it all the time, but I'm getting better at it. What I usually do is in the middle of the conversation, I just intentionally take a really deep breath silently, 2 or 3 of them. And I know when I do that, the message that I've trained my brain around when I do that is to breathe in love and breathe out love. And I only need to do that 2 or 3 times, and I can feel right in the middle of it, I can feel myself coming back from that place. I can just feel it in my body. You feel it in your body first.
Yeah.
But then I notice that when I do that, the capacity for listening I have when I've come back is exponentially larger. And the ideas that I'm able to contribute to a conversation come from more mysterious depths than when the shadow is there and I'm trying to defend and protect myself. I mean, a lot happens in both my brain and in my body when in that coming back thing. There's pleasure centers that's being exercised there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way that you've developed for yourself to do that uniquely in your own way, and I mean, I think part of it is bringing awareness and recognizing the connection between the brain and the body, and knowing that there are strategies that you can use to, as we're talking about, letting go of that that tensions or that distancing yourself from somebody else. And for you, both the breath and whatever the mantra is that you bring to it are helpful and meaningful for you. I think there's lots of ways that people can develop strategies that are unique to who they are, right, to help them with that, to name it, to be with it. The only thing that the only thing that is problematic is when we try to resist it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if we're in the middle of being with somebody and we notice that stuff happening and we're telling ourselves, damn it, stop it. When the shadow is just becoming a shadow on top of a shadow in a way, of being critical of what you're experiencing in a moment, there's no way to let go of it.
Right. Yeah. Most of my life, I believed, and I tried unsuccessfully to think my way back.
Yeah.
Letting go is a thought process primarily. Yeah. I didn't learn until much later in my life. Although I kept saying that's mind, body, spirit, and everything's connected. When push came to shove, I always tried to think my way through things.
Sure.
And of course, it never worked. And I would blame myself for not being able to have the right thoughts.
Yeah.
And it actually got easy is not the right word, but it got more comfortable. And I noticed I started doing it more when I realized that it wasn't really a thought process as much as a body experience.
Well, again, separating the two creates a sort of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Mind and the body are if we think about mind versus brain, the mind is the whole body.
Mm-hmm.
The brain is this thing that we use to think with. But if you let go of that separateness and see the mind as the thing that helps to where the intelligence is carried in our wholeness, not just in our brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fullness of who we are as human beings. And we, in our culture, we've learned to master the brain, but we haven't learned how to work with being whole.
Mm-hmm.
We walk around in our heads and forget that we have bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I read I can't remember something I read online. Maybe it was a poem or something about getting old and coming to recognize the beauty and the wonder of this thing called our body that has carried us through life, right? We sort of ignore that it even exists, except maybe when we gain weight or when we lose weight or we get sick or something like that. But we see it as some kind of tool rather than the wholeness of who we are as a human being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you're in, there's when you're in that shadow place, you're being reactive, right? And when you're able to let go and be fully present with somebody else, you're able to be in a creative place where you're open to what's emerging in the moment in conversation with that person.